want to make sure that our next presenters, oh yes, there it is being recorded. Our next presenters have as much time as possible, so I am going to turn it over to them. Today we have some amazing members from the ALSC Library Service to Underserved Children and their Caregivers Committee, and they are going to talk to us about summer library outreach to underserved children and caregivers. So I will let them take it away. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here, especially following up after Tracy's passionate presentation. So let's keep all this positive energy and excitement for summer reading and this year's fantastic theme going. So my name is Eva Wojciechowska, and I'm here today with my co-presenters, Georgette Spratling, Melody Leung, and Tammy Benham. And we are from ALSC's Library Service to Underserved Children and their Caregivers Committee. And we're here to talk about how to begin outreach with underserved communities and how you can use our toolkits throughout your process. And hopefully we'll leave you with inspiration for programs and services that you can offer to those who need it most this summer. And again, my name is Eva Wojciechowska, and I am the Youth Services Librarian at the Newcastle Public Library in Delaware. And I began this new position a little over a year ago and have since been exploring how I can connect with the underserved communities in our area. And I myself am a first-generation Polish American, and I'm hoping to work with other new Americans in the future. But my main focus has currently been connecting with our homeless population, as we have a rather large percentage of homeless students in our school district. And as one of the newest members of this committee, I have been utilizing many of the same toolkits that we'll be sharing with you all today. So I hope you find this presentation and our resources as helpful as I have.
Good afternoon. My name is Georgette Spratling. I am the Youth Services Librarian here at North Miami Public Library. I am also the Program Coordinator and the Program Manager. I can't say my ideal position as a librarian was to work with underserved communities. However, I am an underserved community. I am a Black female. I'm a single mother. Just to name a few. So it was very easy for me to acclimate myself to working with underserved communities and new Americans. The population of new Americans that I do work with now is mostly Haitian and Haitian Americans here in the city of North Miami.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melody Leung. I am a youth services librarian at the Everett Public Library in Washington State. And I came into the profession knowing that I am a child of a refugee and immigrant parents. My father escaped communist China and met my mother, who was a homeless teen in Hong Kong. And I came into libraries wanting to work with underserved communities, new Americans in particular, but it really depends on what community I'm in and what the needs are. Right now, I'm in more of a city library that has more of a need for the unhoused or more of a diverse population, but that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Tammy Benham, and I am the Youth Services Consultant for 15 counties in the southeast corner of Kansas. My reasons for undertaking this work have to do with lived experience as well. I grew up in rural Kansas, the fifth of 6 children raised primarily by a single mother. The experience of living in poverty left me with an appreciation of how public libraries can contribute to the quality of life. And as an adult, I raised a child diagnosed with learning differences, and I'm very interested in universal design and inclusionary practices. Today, I primarily work with small rural libraries and communities where poverty impacts approximately 13 to 18% of the population, and around 14% of the population is diagnosed with a disability. So I was one of those people that said, yes, Tracy, I want to have that conversation with you about rural communities.
Fantastic. And we'll have time for a Q&A after the presentation. So that's how our day is going to be structured today. But we want to start off by framing our presentation with an advocacy structure that we've developed for each of you to feel inspired and empowered to work with your own underserved communities in your own areas. We have handouts that break this process down further, but these are the 3 main steps. So if you look at the slide, step 1, you see the research and identify need, which is where you're going to brainstorm your potential initiatives, programs, programs and outreach. I see some ideas in chat, or simplified as IPO. Step 2, think about some barriers that you may need to overcome. These are barriers to execute your ideas. They may be internal, organizational focused, or it could be external with your partners or with the community. And step 3, how do you advocate for your community? This is when we encourage you to brainstorm ideas to advocate for your ideas and the community's ideas with the community centered. So before we can dive into the planning of those 3 steps, we recommend taking a step back first to define and identify underserved communities. We'll look at best practices for identifying these communities. So without this step, there isn't as much intention to our work, especially if we have limited resources. Making sure those resources that we do have are going to places where the need is the most is crucial for developing a stronger community.
Melody,
So-
let me stop you for a minute. There's a comment that says they're not seeing any slides. Is that everyone?
No, we can see your slides.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for checking on that, Tammy. So who are underserved communities? How do we determine them? So I like to start by asking ourselves these seemingly simple questions. So who is missing and what is missing? And this works for any community you are in, even affluent communities. This is because we are looking at diversity through an equity lens. So instead of focusing on services for all, what barriers exist for people who that we have not connected with? The word cloud on this slide has some diversities that we may be looking at. So things like age, socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, gender identity, citizenship status, location, housing status. These are all some traits, and these are traits that some we can see and some that we can't see. So sometimes when we think of underserved communities, we may only think about low-income communities or communities with more ethnic diversity. So I want to share that we have to be careful of assuming the correlation of socioeconomic and diverse communities as one and the same. However, it is true that the intersectionality of all of these diversities is important to our work, and we want to make sure not to view each of these groups in a stereotypical lens. So that's why working community is so important. And the commonality of all of these diversities is that each of the communities could use our programs, services, and resources the most. They're usually people who are most in need of information, referrals, and feeling a sense of belonging. The structures in our society may make it harder for these communities to be seen and heard. And this leaves those communities with general services that may leave them out, usually unintentionally, because we haven't looked at us ourselves and our organizations have not looked at our services through these multiple lenses. One lens to look at diversity is through the concept used for literature created by Rudine Sims Bishop, which is mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And this is where we want programs and services that reflect all the children and people in our community to give them a sense of self-worth, as well as give them programs and services about experiences that are different than their own. That way they can develop that empathy and an open mindset for people from all backgrounds and experiences. So what does leaving out a community look like? I ask you to think about this for yourself, and I'll bring up some examples to get some of those ideas flowing. For example, many of us may be in public libraries if we're doing summer reading programs. We may require proper photo ID to get a library card or documentation of some sort for library cards. This can leave out people who are migrant or non-citizen status, who A, may not have the documentation necessary, and B, they may feel a lack of trust in giving out information to a seemingly government agency. Or to look at it from a different lens, it could be the concept of unintentionally using a book at story time that contains negative stereotypes about a group of people. So maybe it's a book that features Asian people only with exaggerated slanted eyes. And I'm not just talking about historical titles, but titles that may be published today or recently. So leaving out a community can take many shapes and forms.
So this slide shows a flow chart that was created by our committee. It shows you how to navigate the process for programming for underserved communities. Our advocacy structure that Melody was speaking about was created from this flow chart. Throughout the presentation, you'll see pieces of the flow chart broken down to help you understand it a little bit better. And to the right of the flow chart, there is a QR code and a link to our toolkits.
Okay. So now, after discovering who the underserved communities in your service area are, you're ready for the next important step of the process, which is going out and talking to members of those communities and really getting to know their needs and wants. So this is an idea that we're going to bring up repeatedly because in general, when it comes to creating and providing programs and services with informed intent, the entire process begins and ends with your community. So why is it so important that we start with the community first? As practitioners, we may have the best intentions with the programs and services we provide, but reaching underserved communities requires us to be more thoughtful about our offerings. Maybe you have a great idea for a program and begin offering it, for example, but find that no one attends. And then you have to ask, is it because the time didn't work? Is it that our location is too far for our underserved patrons to reach? Maybe it's the content of the program. But whatever the problems are, we can't find out if we don't ask. Alternatively, by speaking with the community even before planning a program, we're even better able to create programs and outreach initiatives with authenticity rather than assuming that we know what our community wants. So this brings me to the stage of research. So talking to your community is a great place to start when researching, but it's also important to know what you're looking for when having these conversations. So before I dive into this slide, I just want to mention that our Getting Started flowchart and document overall include many more questions than are presented on this slide. And they're also further organized to help both professionals who are just getting started and those seeking further guidance on their outreach. But I absolutely recommend going through it no matter what stage of the process you're in, both as a tool for conducting initial research and as inspiration for ongoing work within your communities. And as I mentioned previously, I'm one of the newest members on this committee, and I found the Getting Started flowchart and the individual toolkits to be immensely helpful when starting out working with underserved communities. So please utilize them as a guide to help you out. I also very much want to highlight that this work can easily feel overwhelming, especially when first starting out. So please don't feel like you need to have all of the answers right away, because as we've written in the Getting Started document, there is no one size fits all. And the examples we provide are intended to inspire you to connect with your community, to build that trust, and to find resources and partners connecting children and families to each other. So that said, some questions you may want to ask during the stage are the ones I presented on the slide, such as what goals do I have with this work? And now this is the big picture we're looking at. Again, you can explore this question deeper using our toolkit, and you will certainly develop your answer as you proceed with your research, but it can be helpful to at least have a general idea to start. And then next, we're going to look at the details, such as what is being provided and by who. Will you be providing programs, services, resources, all of the above, or something else? And then ask, how often is it being provided? Will this be a one-time program or service, or recurring throughout the summer or regular year? And who will be conducting these programs or services? Will it be yourself, a youth aide, help from outside partners? So now, that said, finally, we take a look at potential partners. And I want you to ask yourself, is there anyone I'm partnered with already that can help? Who else is doing similar work in my community that I can connect with? And again, it's okay to not have all of the answers at this stage, even before reaching out to potential partners. In fact, you may not have many ideas to start and might discover a path forward after speaking with others. So no matter the path you take, it's important that your research takes you outside the library. You can find the answers to your questions by going out, connecting and building trust with your community. And you can do this through discussions with patrons in the library, by joining committees in the community, going to community events, and so on. And again, no matter the method, it's just important that you're making these authentic connections by speaking directly to members of the community you're hoping to help and the people that are already working with them.
So again, as I stated a few slides before, Edward spoke, here is our these are our New American Toolkit. It breaks down the different subsections of what's in the toolkit. And just to reiterate what Edward said about the toolkits, the purpose of these is to give everyone a place to jump in to figure out where you are with your programming. No matter how you or your organization are currently working with these populations. There are certain similarities or approaches when it comes to creating and welcoming inclusive environments for all. However, there are many resources and targeted programs that can be used for specific communities. And this is one of a great resource that you guys can use when programming for this new American population.
Okay, now we're going to get into the flowchart, and we've broken it down for you. This section of the flowchart asks you to reflect on your current capacity, your support, and the next steps you're comfortable with. It's likely this is the step where you'll need to seek support from your supervisor or administrator. We fully acknowledge that the ask for permission to proceed can be very nerve-wracking, and there's really no way to get around that. However, if you've done your best to anticipate perceived barriers and your research is strong and valid, you can easily change a no to a yes. Understand that knowing where your idea might fit into the organizational landscape and planning process for your library is vital. Be prepared to demonstrate where this program fits into the bigger picture. This is where your research can come in really handy. What are your library's goals? Your values? Do you have a mission? Where does your idea fit into that bigger picture? And what about your own professional goals? Does it fit there? Finally, sometimes moving forward slowly with a goal of later expansion can be a good idea where there is resistance. Small victories can lead to bigger success stories later on. One area of resistance that we talked about as a committee was from administrators that need to represent everyone in the same way. You may hear something like, we can't do this for everyone, so we can't do it for anyone. If that sounds familiar, just remember, neutrality positions like this are based on equality and can be grounded in fear of community pushback or a different view of organizational capacity or a variety of other reasons. This all or nothing argument is a way of saying no that may not be considering the differences between equity and equality. When facing this type of resistance, it's important to understand what's demonstrated in this graphic. Equality means providing the same solution for everyone and expecting everyone to have the same outcome. In this case, the ability to see over this fence. Equity means providing what is needed for individuals when it is needed in order to achieve a desired outcome. What outcome have you defined for your project? Do you need an equity approach or an equality approach? Also consider sometimes things are the way they are for a reason. After your research and considering organizational fit, is the original reason for reaching this underserved community still valid? Does this impact your decision to make the ask? If you're ready, then I encourage you to find the courage to move forward so we can all be closer to all together now.
And we have a question about what is a SWOT analysis. Tammy, would you like to answer that?
A SWOT analysis is a way to do your research whenever you are considering the 4 SWOT. So, I knew that I should have written this down. Strengths, weaknesses, go ahead.
Opportunities and threats.
There you go. So whenever you put me on the spot like that and my brain had to switch gears, I wasn't ready for it. So I apologize. Thank you, Melody.
My bad. Yes, it's a business term to kind of look at your competitors in the community and just who is around your community to determine what will work for you and your organization.
Thank you. Okay, then thank you for that question. I appreciate that. The next step in using the toolkit is to choose how you'll reach out to the underserved community you have identified. And we've identified 5 areas for you to consider. Will it be through programs and design, communication and marketing, library collections, stakeholder and partnerships, or equipping staff? You may choose to explore more than one area, and each area may link back to the other. It's good to consider each choice, as it's likely, for example, that a new program may mean equipping staff with additional knowledge or a new addition to your collection could result in the need to adjust your marketing. Also, do you think we've missed something here? Let us know. The Library Services to Underserved Children and their Caregivers Committee always welcomes feedback, and an email link where you can reach us will be provided at the end of this presentation. As children's librarians, we understand the importance of concrete examples for what programming might look like to underserved populations. And these next few slides are examples of programs we've undertaken during the summer months to work with underserved populations and their families. The programming idea I'll share with you targeted students who tested below reading level, who were attending an elementary school that received Title I funding for low-income children and their families. The program was designed as a way to help underserved population prevent summer slide, one of the stated benefits of summer library program participation. This underserved population was targeted due to low participation at library events and low use of library resources. They didn't have adequate means to access the library. With the support of my director, I arranged a meeting with a Title I teacher at the elementary school who, as Tracy mentioned, was my door opener, and asked if she would be interested in partnering on this project to support 3rd and 4th grade students who were identified as struggling readers. Participation involved the teacher using existing data from reading assessments to identify and target students, then contacting family members to request permission to participate. Each week, our library mailed participating students a popular book that was at their reading level. The books were often comic or graphic, and a self-initiated or passive programming idea designed to build and support literacy. All materials or manipulatives to complete the programming idea were included in the mailing, and some examples were lap-sized chalkboard with chalk and writing prompts, gel pens and word search puzzles, magnetic alphabet letters, and inexpensive Dollar Tree cookie sheets. We tried to pair a literacy building idea with something that would incentivize participation. And then families kept all the materials and the books at no cost. We didn't follow up to see if there was participation during the summer, grade any assignment, or make any student prove that they had completed any task. We did hear from families when their box was late or missing or got lost in the mail, but that was kind of reassuring for us to let us know that they were still out there and that the kids were really looking forward to getting these boxes in the mail. We ran the program to about the first week in August, which in our area, school typically begins in the 2nd or 3rd week. And at the end of summer, we sent a thank you letter to the families and asked them to complete a survey that would be provided by their Title I teacher at back to school night. When school started, the usual reading tests were conducted. We didn't ask the school to conduct additional testing for this program, but used data from existing tests. This post-test measure was used to compare to the pre-test at the beginning of summer. And I was elated to find that the majority of students that participated maintained or gained reading level. In year 2, the data collected on the student achievement in year 1 was used to successfully advocate for Title I funding from the school to expand the program. Now, there were drawbacks. Capacity is always an issue, and in the 2nd year, I ended up hiring a teacher for a few hours to help organize the program. Additionally, some families were more transient, so not all starting families were retained. And overall, families did indicate that they enjoyed the program and that the students loved getting mail each week. And that turned out to be a huge incentive for participation in itself. It almost became a competition among kids who did get to participate and kids who didn't. As a public librarian, I'm not overly concerned with pre or post tests, and I wasn't then. However, I needed a way for schools to find value in this program, and testing was that bridge that I needed. Also, I realized that the program could have had 0 impact on reading level scores. The students who maintained or gained reading level may have had the same achievement without participating in this program. Our research design was not formal and maybe it wasn't valid. However, I ran the program for 2 years and then I moved on to a different position out of state. At the very least, the public library goal, our goal that I was concerned with of reaching this underserved population was achieved, and home libraries were built, and the schools provided another way to support families who were enrolled in this Title I program.
This next example has to do with a migrant community, a farming community, and a rural library. It is something that did take 3 or 4 years to execute. And I wanted to share that it takes time to get to the vision or the big idea or the dream program or connection with the community that you want to have, but there are different steps that you can take. So I'll share this story through our advocacy framework. So step 1 was research and identify need. So when I started in this community, I knew that there was a pretty big Hispanic or Latino population. However, after talking to some of my colleagues, some who speak Spanish, who are part of the Spanish-speaking community, some who work with the families that are there year-round and who come just for the summertime to pick the berries, we learned that there is a vibrant migrant community that lives there year-round, but they're not included in the census with the information that I was looking up. So we learned that these kids were the ones who were coming from California and Texas during the summertime. They usually miss, due to semester versus or the systems of the school year, missing a month of school, leaving early to go travel to Washington State. They were also going back a month late in order to be there during peak berry picking season. And there were also some other needs too. There were 3 camps that were in my area at that library, and some of the camps had refrigerators and kind of nice spaces, but there were some camps that didn't have refrigerators. So food scarcity was something that was an issue where they didn't have a way to keep food. And also with like relocating like that during the middle of the year, there were issues with figuring out healthcare, where to go, social services, you can imagine. And the biggest one that my coworker that I worked with noticed throughout the years of trying to connect with these camps is that childcare was a huge part that was needed. So both of the parents in these families were required to work in the fields in order to stay in these camps. This also included many of the older children who are about 11, 12 and up to work. That way they can make the most money that they could during this time. And granted, so you have to think about the barriers that these families may have. So do they have work during the rest of the year? Is this their only source of income to help them during the year? So with the childcare portion, the older kids, and when I mean older, I mean maybe 5 to 10, they're the ones taking care of the younger siblings. There was a migrant preschool that's available. We were never really sure if it was available during each of the years, but it was strong while I was at this library, where they took the 0 to about 3 or 4-year-olds to a preschool. And that way they can be watched and cared for while the older kids were working and the school age kids were kind of running in the fields, having fun with the farming equipment, things like that. The next step was to look at what barriers do I need to overcome. So by talking to the community, we learned that there were some key barriers for this population. So the first is trust. So the library, even though we try to be as welcoming as we can seem like a government entity. It seems like we're trying to get information from them, name, address, all those things, ID. So trust is a huge part of being connected with this community. Time was a big thing too, because these families were working dawn till dusk. Yes, they had their fiestas on Friday nights to have like a little party and share food, but other than that, they didn't have a lot of time to go to the public library, which was maybe about a 10 or 15-minute drive. So transportation wasn't always available. Big families going around, the cost for gas probably wasn't something that they were looking at. Definitely a language barrier. We had a couple of staff members who spoke Spanish, but not everybody did, including myself. I do not speak Spanish fluently, but we do have translation services when they do come into the library. We have those resources, but it's hard to come into the library to find out without feeling like you're being like something different. You're another person. You're not part of the norm or the general culture of the library. And then the last barrier I have here is cultural norms. So according to my coworker, who's in the pink here, she said that in Mexico, a lot of times the libraries there are only for scholars and academics. They're not like what we think of for public libraries. So when these families are coming in, they don't know that the library is free. They don't know that our services are there, that we focus on early literacy and children and things like that too. So these were the big barriers that I had. And for the first couple of years, I couldn't figure out how to take on all of that. I was very overwhelmed because there were all these different needs, and there were a lot of needs that we couldn't be the source of, or the ones to kind of pull everything together. How are we going to figure out healthcare, social services, food? There needs to be a big group of people to do that. So what I did first was actually do other types of programming during the year. There were some families that actually stayed during the year at these camps, and then a bulk of families that came during the rest of the during the summertime. So this is going to be part of step 3. How do you advocate for the community? And basically I had to try to start where I could. I had to tell all of my different work groups, explain why this community matters. And yes, I had to do that. How are our normal library services not reaching this population? And so I started by making connections and doing outreach programs. This included working with an English language learning teacher who really wanted to help some of these kids who were coming to school without preschool, without being kindergarten, first grade, and coming without an English language skills, on how to, these were kids that were graded on their reading assessments almost every week and showing that they were failing. And so I sat down with her, we talked about what is the main need that you have for these kids. She had a lot of the farming kids in this program and in this school. So what we ended up doing were lunch groups that really focused on reading confidence for that 3rd grade level. And it was really interesting because we were reading picture books that were helping them build confidence, books like Dreamers by Judy Morales, Dream Girl by Marguerite Engel, talking about these big picture concepts. And I also shared that, hey, I knew a kid who didn't go to school until 2nd grade. Their parents didn't speak English, but then then the kids started raising their hand. Miss Melody, are you talking about me? The kids were saying, we're thinking that I was talking about them, but really I was talking about me. I said, this kid became a librarian, and this is when I realized that my face mattered for these kids. They wanted to see that people can succeed, even if they had some setbacks when they're very young. And we learned a lot by connecting with these families this way. And we also did family engagement book groups. If any of you are familiar with the Primetime family reading program, that's available in many states in the US, you can look that up. It's a great program to connect with schools, connect with community partners, and then bring in kids and invite kids and families who could use that reading engagement the most with their families. So those are big ways to connect, and that's how I started little by little. And with these statistics and these stories, I was able to obtain the buy-in little by little, and it really helped with this summer outreach idea where we got connected with the Northwest Educational Service District. They span, I think it's 13 school systems or counties, and it was their special migrant education program. We became part of a coalition of partners that delivered holistic service for the summer migrant community. So the partners included food banks, a community health center, faith-based organizations that have each done this work individually for a long time, but together we could coordinate and partner much more efficiently. We worked with a bilingual outdoor summer camp program as well that was funded through the school district, and basically brought the library to the families in 2 ways, so actively and passively. So for active programming, we visited the camps weekly to engage with their summer camp. That's what this picture of a notepad on the bottom left here, notepad, craft bags or activity bags, and some of these other activities like Orbeez and balloons for stress balls. That's what we did for one of the sessions. We went there every week to talk to the kids about what is a story? Why is it fun? Miss Amelia here did the story for La Llorona and scared the kids, but they loved it. So we were trying to figure out how to share stories without making it just about reading. And on the other side, passively, we obtained funding for little free libraries for each camp and stocked them with books that fit the community. So that means bilingual books, Spanish books, some English. And these books did not need to be checked out. They just use them. We track kind of the usage of them, how well used they were, to kind of see how much they were used. We also provided rotating book walks. You can see it on the top left here. This is the end of one of the book walks. I believe the book is Hike by Pete Oswald, a wordless book. These rotating book walks basically was for them to tell their own stories and to read together in English and Spanish with their families while we were not there, because that might be the only time that they had. The activity kits that we had that you see with the summer outreach, they were also distributed during the weekly food distribution times. And that was a really good way to connect with the families and have more open conversation with the parents, in this case, or caregivers. So throughout this process, there was a lot of problem solving that was involved. My key advice is when you pitch an idea and you are faced with a no, ask why, and then brainstorm how to overcome those hesitancies to get to a yes. And my way was to do connection a little bit by little bit, and then show that the work really matters. And this way, I was able to obtain funding through our foundation and through some other community grants to get these libraries done. And this was during 2021, basically during that COVID time, right? So the pandemic time, being able to do an outreach like this was a huge thing. And lastly, I want to point out that again, I don't speak Spanish, but I have the support for I was the support for my colleagues that do. And these are colleagues that may not have been able to do a lot of this work because of the barriers they were facing. So even if you are not part of a community you're hoping to serve, please be an ally and help organize and empower those who are part of the communities you aim to serve, because that's how we're going to get stronger and further together with working with underserved communities. Georgette, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. And I knew I was going to do that. Okay, so what I was saying was that I'm very big on partnerships and building programs for the community through community partners. And this summer outreach is a perfect example of that, as well as building on your partnerships. So in the previous session, the presenter spoke about taking your programs outside of the library so people can see what the library is actually doing and say, hey, I didn't know libraries do that. Let me start going to my library. So with my particular library, we are not a part of the county system. We are actually a municipal library, so we don't get the same privileges as the county libraries. And one of those privileges is passes to museums. So the county library system allows for patrons to check out museum passes as if it was a book, and then you just return it like it was a book, right? And again, we don't have that same privilege. However, it's programs like this particular one that I'm getting ready to talk about that allows us to be able to think of ways to create that same privilege for libraries like mine. This particular outreach was a visit to the Miami Dolphins training camp. And it all started with a partnership that we have with Prosperity Social Community and Development Group. They actually do a summer camp here at the library. And they had a speaker who by the name of Jason Jenkins, who happened to be the Senior Vice President of Community Development for the Miami Dolphins. Unfortunately, he recently passed. However, he was able to come to the library to talk to the kids of the summer camp who were here to let him know about his position, what he does in the community, what he provides, and what the Miami Dolphins do as a whole for the community. And, after he spoke with the kids, he walked around, he spoke with our director a little bit, and he left. And then, he made a phone call back to us saying, hey, I would like to invite you and some of your patrons to the Miami Dolphins training camp. So we scrambled and got together because we were so excited about this new initiative. We got together a few patrons, it was about 30 or so young patrons that we were able to take to this training camp. The only barrier that we had was transportation, but we do have a wonderful friends group who very often sponsor a lot of our programs. So we spoke to them. They were able to provide sponsorship for some of the things that we needed, and we went ahead and paid for the transportation. And we met here at the library. We took them to the Dolphins training camp. They treated us like VIP. We were on the field. The kids were able to get autograph from the football players, and they also fed the kids breakfast. And they also gave a tour of the practice facility. And communities, in underserved communities, a lot of times they don't have the opportunity to even maybe go to a Dolphins football game. So to be able to, you know, meet with these players one-on-one, see what the facility looks like that you probably wouldn't get a chance to see. I think that was a great way to serve these kids. And a lot of times we, you know, have to realize with most underserved populations, if they don't see themselves doing it, like Melody mentioned, you know, a lot of times these young kids, if they don't see someone who looks like them, I would say, they will think it's not attainable. But if they see people like us working in the library and doing these different things and having these programs and being able to provide for the community, then they'll be able to see themselves doing these things that we provide for them, the programming that we provide for them, whether it be an art program, whether it be a music program, where they may not have gotten that experience before. And I want to go back to what I was saying about going outside of the library and those museum passes that are at the county libraries. So what we decided to do after we saw how well this particular trip worked for the library, we decided to do library field trips. So every time the kids have a teacher's work day, instead of parents have to scramble and trying to figure out where they're going to put their kids, they have to work. They don't know what to do. They don't want to leave their kids at home. We decided to do field trips to museums, to different libraries on those particular days. So that way the kids will have somewhere to go. They'll be fed and they'll be protected, and the parents will know exactly where their children are. So that's a perfect example of how partnering with your community partners and building on those partnerships and programming from those programs can come from just anything that you see around you. Oh, this will be a great idea. Or if you speak with someone that just so happen to be at your program, hey, we do this. Is it a good idea? Would it be a good idea for us to bring this to the library? Of course, of course. So I just wanted to say that, you know, even though, you know, we want to try to get people inside, the patrons inside of the library, young patrons, adults, older patrons, we want them to come to the library, but we also want them to know that there's things that are outside of the library that are attainable for them. And if we can do our best to try to help them reach those different places, then that, you know, that's what we want to try to do.
Those are our main three examples, and we're a team that has a lot of ideas. We will not go over the slide, but we just wanted to put out there some more ideas of partnership story times with the local autism center, because we're thinking about diversities in multiple forms, visible and invisible. Summer meals for kids and teens, being a place for summer meals for kids and teens or just people to pick up. Think about summer camps. I worked with a summer camp for the migrant outreach, but there is a lot of opportunities for summer camps. And just think about bringing programming outside your doors. So that includes things like laundromats, parades, fairs, parks, the Boys and Girls Club, shelters, many things that you can think of.
I also wanted to mention, and Heidi asked for a grant opportunity. This is one that's coming up, the ALSC Candlewick Press Light the Way grant, which is due December 22nd, awards $3,000 to engage an underserved population of children from birth to up to age 14. And I know everyone is now on that link and not paying attention to us, which is fine with me. But also the PLA webinar, Using Data to Engage Underserved Communities, was present yesterday. So if you're looking to do a deeper dive into this topic, please look for that recording and check it out.
Speaking of grants, you could do local grants. I did, local credit unions. There's Costco. Some of those places have grant opportunities where there's not a lot of strings pulled with them. So look for local grants too.
I'm sorry, before we move on to the reflection, I see someone says that they don't qualify for any of the food programs. What you can do is get with a partner that does qualify and then have your library be a vendor or a location for where the kids can come and get the food.
And I also put a link to a page I keep with external grant opportunities. Feel free to hit it up, and I hope something's useful there.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself again. Here's the reflection portion of our program. As you can see to the right, again, this is a part of our flow chart. This is the end of the flow chart where you start asking yourself questions about your programming and again, reflecting back on the programming that you did do. Have you identified new needs in the community? Are you ready to research a new population? Are you ready to take on a new element of service for this population? And again, it flows to no, yes, if those are your answers, and then you can start over when you start a new program. Or if not, if you feel like you've met the need and that your program was definitely a success, then you can move on to a new program where you can put your time and research into. Again, like I said, partnership, collaborations, anything that you can do to help take the load off of you and also give new ideas to programming that you're doing. Learn more, just like this program, this webinar that we're doing right now. You're learning on how to create these programs for the summer, how to advocate for summer programming for your patrons. Just continue to research, look at what other libraries are doing. You don't always have to start over. You don't have to create new programming. If you see a program in a community that you think will work great in your community, just use their blueprint. You don't have to make the work so hard for yourself, but continue to do the research, continue to read, continue to talk to your community, continue to talk to partnerships, and continue programming. Make sure you have those programs so that way you know, our children in the summertime can have somewhere to go and constructive things to do.
Yeah, there may come a time when you have a program and it doesn't go very well, and certainly not as well as you wanted it to come off. The attendance might be low, people might leave early, or you might run out of room or materials or patience. Instead of logging your program as a failure and throwing in the towel, I encourage you, consider what you might do differently next time. Yes, next time. Instead of settling for a one and done program, take the time to reflect on your experience. And it is all the time and effort and all the reasoning for why you took on this initiative still valid. Then learn from your experience and try it again. You've got this.
And hopping on just with what Tammy said, I also want to encourage you all to not give up, especially in the beginning, because making new connections and building trust can be very difficult at first. And you might feel as though you'll never be able to get started, but keep going. And it might take a long time before you even feel like you have enough puzzle pieces together to get started. And that's completely okay and not a sign of failure. And again, as one of the newest members of this committee and also a new librarian to my library, I have been in this stage for a long time. I have been making connections, reaching out to partners I didn't even know were out there. So you are going to meet so many wonderful people in your community who will be ready to help you. And you just got to go out there and keep trying and keep finding them. They are out there and they will work with you, and you will do wonderful things for your communities this summer.
And to bring everything back to our communities, I wanted to inspire everyone to look at the bigger picture. We want to encourage library practitioners like all of you to feel like you can do this work. It's easy to feel discouraged when one of these aspects in the yellow has failed. Tammy has talked about some of those, Maybe there was a miscommunication with your partner, your values don't align, no one shows up. Each of these individual aspects may have a end, but our work is like a circle where you're centering the community in each part of the process, and that's why it's so important. And lastly, don't forget to celebrate the little victories along the way. I'm sure each of you in attendance have done many things you're proud of, and some of you have a larger vision that you hope to achieve, like I did. Let yourself bask in the little victories, my little lunch group, my family reading programs, because those opportunities and ideas, those will give you the energy you need for when a new opportunity arises. So now I want to thank you all for listening and showing so much love and passion for this work as much as we do. And thank you so much for the CSLP team for inviting us. And we'd like to open the floor for questions. And we'll also give you the handout link folder here again. This is a QR code and a short bit.ly here. And this is the email for if you have suggestions, updates, or thoughts for us. We always love to connect with practitioners who have the similar interest in the work that we all love to do.
Hi.
If there isn't any, if there's questions that we don't have time to answer, our individual emails are in, that were on the first page, the second page of the slides. If you can go back and look from the recording, they should be there. And we're all open to, emails about what questions you may have.
I heard someone unmute.
Hi, yes. So I'm Adrienne Butler, so I'm helping moderate, and there are some questions. One definitely I wanted to ask were the books that were mailed out, were they library books or books for them to keep?
Those were books for them to keep. And so part of our grant, it was a grant supported program, and part of the budget specifically went to purchase of books that they kept.
And then how did you manage to sign up for the field trip, the transportation and food? And did you need trained care providers?
We did a email blast for registration. So it was a first come, first serve type of thing. And we also did permission slips, of course. The insurance came with the transportation, so we didn't have to worry about that. But we do have our young patrons under the age of 18 fill out permission slips, and their parents have to come in person to fill it out, because we know a lot of times we like to sign our own forms. So we have to have the parents come in person to fill out that that permission slip.
And I have two questions here on barriers. One is that the library had sent out a survey to households. They only got 80 responses, and it just created more questions. So how do they start the dialogue on getting some information from those communities they're trying to reach out to?
I can start by saying, try to connect with community leaders. It could be, depending on the community that you're trying to look for, who are advocacy organizations that may have worked with these communities before. It would connect you closer to some of these families, because it could be that it's a trusting, it could be that they don't know that this survey exists, but you have to go out there and find the people who may have more of that information.
Yeah, and find the outlet that they trust the most. I know here in North Miami, where there's a high Haitian population, they listen to Haitian radio. So anytime we need to get some information out there as far as programming, anything that may be going on in the city, anything that the library is doing, giveaways, programs, anything, we put it on Haitian radio and they come out. So you have to find where they are and what they're doing and insert yourself in that so that they can see you.
I really think that probably answered the next question, which was a language barrier. They have a large Hispanic population, and while they do offer bilingual programming, it's not quite hitting the mark that they want, and they would like to include more Spanish-speaking families in their programs.
I'll start with that where my colleague who does speak Spanish and part of the Spanish speaking community did try bilingual story time as well during the mornings, during the times that we normally had regular story times, you know, at 10:30, 9:30. However, there may be 1 or 2 families who spoke Spanish who attended, and this presenter is someone who's very well known in the community. She's trusted and everything. And then there were some people that came that wanted to learn Spanish. So that wasn't the intent of the program. She wanted to create something that could let this community thrive and connect with each other. So she started talking to the families and kind of started realizing I don't have to follow the library schedule of events. I can choose a different time because a lot of these families are working during the day. And if they're going to come to something, she ended up doing family fiestas with lots of games, traditional games, food, stories at night, and did an evening program instead. So to answer that, check back with your community and see what you can do. It could be that it's an idea that the library has, like for example, story times are usually in the morning, that's the best time. But in this case, it was an evening thing that became the best.
And I will just also say, think about what Tracy said earlier about finding those door openers and also about getting out and walking through your community, because walking is way different than driving. And you are going to find people if you go into the store or the bodega and you go talk to people, you're going to find the right people if you're in the community where your underserved population lives.
And then one more question about barriers. How do you talk to your administrators when you are considering that you're going to get backlash from your possible backlash? And when it comes to prejudice, and there's specifically thinking about LGBTQ plus folks, but it could apply with any group really.
I think, so there's ways that you can quietly program without, you know, putting it out there. Just gauge your patrons that you know are of that community or of whatever community and start having conversations with them. Maybe you can start a focus group with them or just, you know, someone that they can speak to when they come in and to get resources from. And then once, you know, the administration knows that you have an audience, they will probably be more open to you programming for them. A lot of times there may be pushback or prejudice because of what the group represents. However, that's a good way to go ahead and start adding in those community leaders and push for programming like that to show that there is a population out here that we do need to reach. The population is in your library. I'm here to advocate for this population. We need to start programming for them just like we program for everybody else.
And I'll add to that, having done diversity advisory committees, trying to make sure that the library system is as inclusive and welcoming as it can be for the staff, but also the patrons and the staff who work there. And I'm going to channel some of my mentors here and think of how they would tell administration or influence administration how to tell them this community matters. And we have to think about what are we doing here in, I'm assuming here a lot of public libraries, and really it's the library is for everyone. And if there is someone who is saying something or pushing back against that, you can let them know that there are people who are LGBT or whatever community in this community, and we are providing this for them. Our programs are just like our books. If we have a display that has many different viewpoints, you have the choice to attend or not. You have a choice to pick up that book or not. And so you have to make sure that voice of making sure you're serving everyone is strong in your administration to be able to do that. So that also reminds me of making sure that you have policy in place to protect you. So when we're talking about banned books, we talk about collection development policies, but I know some libraries are also doing policies that are relating to programming and outreach to show, yes, we are going to go to the Black Lives Matter March. Yes, we are going to go to the Pride Festival, right? And we're going to do this program. We're going to do this drag queen story time, and we have policy to back us up on that. Yes, so we can do it quietly or loudly.
And then Tammy, you had wanted to answer this question. Did the program continue after you left the Title I schools?
So I don't really have great information on that. I wanted to say that is about when the pandemic struck and things got thrown up in the air and it all became, lettuce salad. So I really don't know. I need to follow up and find out. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I think we're at almost done. We have 1 minute left, I believe. Melody, what did you do when you started to feel discouraged trying to make connections during those first 4 years?
That's a great question. I focused on, like I said in the reflection piece, on the small victories that I did have, the families that were coming to story time that were including, hey, I say hola in Spanish for my good morning or my hello song, and feeling like they are seen in story time, they're seen on the shelves. Those are all things that I had to make sure to do, because like our 5 different IPOs, initiatives, programs, and outreach, thinking about the marketing that we're doing, thinking about the way that we're making sure that the world language collection, which include the Spanish collection, is at the front of the library rather than the back. These are all things that I could work on to make sure that the library itself was an inclusive place for right when someone walks in and they know that, hey, I am seen here. I can see myself on this shelf. That means I belong here. So making sure I focus on those direct impacts I can make on the kids. And there's just so many stories that you can just bask in. So let yourself do that, because then when these opportunities, bigger opportunities come, you'll be ready.
I would like to thank you all. This is great information. I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions in the question and answer, but we do have it here. And you have your email there. Kathy Lancaster, do you want to take us into our break?
Sure. We'll be back here at 2 o'clock Eastern. That's 11 a.m. Pacific in about 14 minutes now. Thank you so much to the committee for sharing. And if you don't mind, stop sharing your screen. I will get our intermission slides up. All right. See you all back here in about 15 minutes.